Bandwidth for VT Talk is provided by vaporworld.co.uk.
Well, hello, good evening. It's Wednesday night, it's 9 o'clock, and tonight's VT Talk sees a transatlantic guest. I'm going to keep it slightly secret until we've gone through the titles, but tonight we're going to be looking at all kinds of things. Juices, kind of regulations on juices, the American take on juices, what's happening in America and what's happening in the UK, because the two do tie together quite well. The news will be good and bad in parts, like a curate's egg, but that's always the case in VT Talk. And indeed here we are, and as you can see tonight I've put the rose between the two thorns. Straight over my shoulder we have Sav, Kirstine, Sav, Kirstine, Kirstine, Sav. As usual, my partner in crime here, the effervescent loveliness that is she. But to her left, a very special guest, Scott Eley of Vaporcast and the American E-Liquid Manufacturing Standards Association. Good evening to you, Scott. How are you, sir?
Doing quite well, Dave. How about yourself?
I'm walking about and breathing, which is about as much as you can expect when you get to my age. We met first face-to-face, person-to-person, hand-to-hand in Ireland, at Vapefest Ireland. But as I recall, you were there on your honeymoon, were you not?
I was. It was a much-delayed honeymoon, actually. I think we were married 2 years ago, so... You know, as things come up, your everyday life seems to get in the way of what you want to do. So we were finally able to get around to it, and luckily enough, we were able to plan it around Vapefest Ireland. So 2 wins right there all at once.
I can only assume that you've got a very, very understanding wife. Is she an e-cig user as well?
She is. Her daily setup is a silver bullet at 6 volts with a standard resistance atomizer. Wow,
6 volts. Is that set up with electronics or with 2-3 volts stacked?
Yeah, it's a 2-3 volt stack.
Well, okay. Hey, how long's she been using that?
Well, the silver bullet started off as mine. I got that in December of 2009, I believe, right after they came out. So she started using it probably in March of 2010. So she's been using it for that long.
Right. Here's a question for you. Has she had any issue with that stacked configuration in any way, shape or form?
Well, no, she hasn't had any issues with it. Of course, running those batteries stacked, there's obvious dangers inherent in them. They also tend to not last very long. So if a normal battery would last 6 months, you really need to change the stacked batteries every 3 or 4 months. But as far as any issues with the batteries getting hot or overdrawing the current on the batteries, there hasn't been an issue so far.
Okay, that's good. That was basically what I wanted to hear and what I thought would be the reply. Whenever I come across anybody that uses stacked batteries, I always ask that question, because we keep on hearing horror stories peddled in various different places about, you know, use stacked batteries and it's guaranteed it's going to blow your head off. But I've yet to find anybody I've spoken to in real life that's found that. So that's good to hear. Thank you for that. You're going a long way to confirming what I was thinking. That's always good. Always good. How did you find Vapefest Ireland? What did you make of the event of it in and of itself, and you know the welcome that you got there?
Well, it was a fantastic event. I believe Shane had said that it was the first even meetup that he knew of in Ireland. So if that was the first meetup, not only the first meetup, but the first big, large event of that type, I'd say it was a smashing success. The room was great. The vendors that were there was a great turnout of people. Overall, everybody was very friendly. Got to see some new devices, a lot of the new rebuildable Addy tanks that we don't have here in the U.S. It was a great event, and hopefully I can go back next year.
I'm sure they would love to see you. And did I pick up right earlier on that you've gotten into rebuildables yourself now?
I do. At VaporCon, which was a couple weekends ago, I bought a Zenesis Sidewinder, which has it's the 18350 mod that the battery's on the side, the plunger button, and it has the tank basically built into it. So I've been using that, been learning the tricks and the techniques and all the tips I've gotten for how to make that run even better. Yeah,
there's a lot of people are getting into those, and quick plug for tomorrow night's show. Tomorrow night's show will be no different. We're going to be looking at Genesis atomizers in some great depth. We've got a guest as well, which will be good. It'll be absolutely brilliant. Have chat come up with anything thus far, Kirst?
It's a question that came in straight away from John Bon1, and he's asking, where have the podcasts gone, Scott, and will they be back soon?
There you go, Scott. Where are they? When are they coming back?
Yeah, we get that question a lot. We've been busy building a brick and mortar store in Ohio, so that pretty much occupies the evenings and occupies the weekends. The good news is that store is getting ready to open up to the general public within the next few days, really. Hopefully after that we'll have more time to sit down and record. And that's really where the delay in the podcast has been. It's just we don't have time. So we still want to do it. We haven't quit doing it. It's just been on hiatus while we got some other things done.
There you go, John. It's coming back. Any more on that? Or is John a happy bunny now?
I think John's a very happy bunny to know that they're coming back. And there's just a little bit of chat going on about people who use stack batteries and that nobody's had their heads blown off yet.
Interesting, isn't it? After all the warnings and the scares and everything else, nobody died. All good stuff. It's kind of... I had mixed feelings about all of that. And I suppose, in some degree, that takes us on to the American E-Liquid Manufacturing Standards Association, of which you are VP, I believe, Scott.
I am Vice President of that organization, and Vaporcast, as a juice manufacturer, is a general member of that organization as well.
Right. Now, I've been seeing some controversy going on one of the American forums, well, ECF, e-cigarette forum, and there seems to have been a number of, I won't call them arguments, but discussions going on. But you were saying earlier before we went live that some of those have been put to rest and one or two changes have been made as a result of that, is it?
Yeah, I think everybody in the community, the e-cig community, they're always suspicious of when groups like this form. We didn't expect everybody just to throw open their hands and welcome us. We did expect there would be some issues that people would raise and so forth, because traditionally in the past when these kind of organizations have started, TVECA, the ECA, the original incarnation of that, they were very large manufacturer based. So the large commercial e-cig manufacturers really ran those groups, and they didn't have generally regarded to be the best intention of the vapor in mind. They always pushed for pre-filled cartomizers only, no refillable liquid to be sold, flavors to only be tobacco, menthol, things like that. And so when we launched, I think there was a lot of suspicion about what the group was. Was this, well, whatever. There was a lot of suspicions around the group, and I can understand that. There was also a lot of people worried that this organization was built just to push out the mom and pops or to try to form some kind of monopoly between the members, and that's not the case at all. We're totally open. Any vendor can apply. We do have our published standards that the members of the organization have agreed to. We listen. We're active in the community. So a lot of those initial suspicions hopefully have been calmed a little bit, and people have had a chance to really see what we're about.
Yeah, it's been very interesting reading through the published standards, and they're there for anybody to get a hold of and have a look at and read. I've just downloaded the PDF, so I assume it's right up to date. And I must admit that a lot of what's in there is what I would call common sense. If we just drop onto the page and shoot past the definitions and look at, you know, some of the stuff that's pretty sensible. I mean, you're talking about all manufacturers must confirm the accuracy of nicotine content upon delivery from supplier. Well, duh. All nicotine must be titrated, verified for content accuracy after dilution to working level. Again, good practice, nothing wrong with that. All equipment must be either NST calibrated or ASTM compliant. That's not something that we're necessarily familiar with over here. NIST? What's NIST?
I'm probably going to butcher the acronym, but it's the National. It's a standards organization that says, like a syringe, for example. If a syringe is NIST compliant, then they have taken the steps to verify that if it says 1 milliliter, that when you fill it up to 1 milliliter and plunge the syringe, you get exactly 1 milliliter. It's an organization that really make sure that if something is being sold for lab use or for medical use, it does dispense, or whatever the item may do, exactly what it says it does. And this can cover everything from scales to syringes to cylinders, pipettes, those kind of things.
That's good. The next two bits, I don't want to try and ambush you here at all. But it does say all products produced will be within the tolerance level of plus or minus 5% nicotine content in final product. 5%?
Yes.
That's 50 milligrams.
No. So if you have a juice that's 12 milligram, that's 1.2% nicotine. You can vary off of that 1.2% by 5%. Of 1.2%.
Right. Okay. I must have picked that up the wrong. Well, I did. I picked that up the wrong way. And then the one that we were talking about earlier, the maximum allowable nicotine content in final flavoured product will be no greater than 32 milligram per milliliter. I'm a 36 and 45 man. You've got to stretch that if I'm going to buy American juices.
Well, and the maximum allowable nicotine content is actually a great example of how, you know, this organization does listen to not only the vendors but also to the community. We did issue a change last night that we've increased the number to 36. We haven't updated the standards yet because to update this PDF is very complicated, the way it's laid out and how everything is indexed. So we haven't yet updated the standards page as it's on the website, but we do have a blog post where that information was corrected, I guess you could say, or published.
Right.
And anytime we make any changes, if you just go to the AEMSA.org website, it's a blog post right there. I think the blog post specifically is AEMSA answers more community questions or something along those lines.
Yeah, I was reading that yesterday, and again, a lot of what was there made a lot of sense to me. The big question that kind of came to mind when I heard about, how are you pronouncing it, AEMSA?
Yeah, AEMSA is just generally how we've been pronouncing it.
Okay. When I first heard about AEMSA, I was also hearing one or two other rumours about negotiations that were ongoing with the FDA. Now, I know you are not personally involved with this, but when you mentioned earlier on cartomizers and how original bodies that were formed, either as consumer associations or as trade associations, had been pushing for cartomizers and tobacco and menthol and nothing else. What I'm hearing now is that the FDA is in cahoots with, I think it's Blue, V2, Enjoy, and one or two others, and that the likelihood is that the agreement that will come out of it will be cartomizers, pre-filled cartomizers only, and no bottled juice. Are you hearing anything about that over there? Is that why AEMSA was pulled together to try and present a cogent set of standards to the FDA to say, look, this is what we're doing. This is the level that we're doing it to. This is why you should be allowing it to go ahead. Have I picked that up right, or is it nothing to do with that?
Well, I would say yes to some extent to all of those things. The goal of AEMSA is to represent e-liquid manufacturers or the members of the organization who are e-liquid manufacturers. Obviously, e-liquid manufacturers want to maintain the ability to sell bottled e-liquid. And that's something that a lot of e-cigarette users also want. So what we're trying to do with the standards is produce a realistic and reasonable. I mean, all of those standards should be what people are already doing, but to produce realistic and reasonable standards that can be used for sustainable regulation for the members.
Okay. Now, what I'm hearing you saying, and I take you at your word. Well, having met you, I would say that I would say you're one of the good guys, and take that as a compliment because I don't say that about everybody.
Well, thank you.
And I fully believe yourself and Lou and Link when you say why the organisation was there, and why it's been put there. But there has been, I know, a lot of talk about what you call mom and pop stores and what we tend to term bathtub mixers, as in places that are not in laboratories, places that are, I don't know, mixing in their kitchen, you know, that's not up to food hygiene standards, or on a table somewhere, or wherever, we know not where. When all of this kind of comes to fruition, as the FDA is pushing, we know the FDA is pushing for regulation as much as the MHRA is over here. Do you foresee a situation where the mom and pop juice manufacturers, or mixers as a better term, would be pushed out of business by the FDA taking on the standards that AEMSA has come up with? And if so, how would you protect them?
Well, AEMSA is for professional e-liquid manufacturers, and if you're producing e-liquid for consumer use, for sale, I would hope that you're already producing in a clean and sanitary environment, that you're using measurement tools that are calibrated, can be verified, that you're using source materials that are all verified and USP grade. These are all things that the mom and pop should be doing already. So if the FDA picked up these standards, could that potentially push out a mom and pop? Well, I certainly don't hope so. And it would also come down to the FDA having to regulate that. That's not something we're going to do. We're not a regulatory agency. Right.
But it's kind of an agreed set of standards that the membership of AEMSA would all adhere to. I'm not going to say compulsorily, because it's a voluntary organisation, and it's whatever it is, $400-500 a month to be a member of, is it not?
Yeah, there's a $500 application fee, and the membership dues are $425 a month. So that works out to $5,100 a year to be a member. What those fees go to, of course, the budgets are created by the membership every year. So the membership decides what their goals for the year are. The budget is based around that, and of course, you have to have the membership dues to meet the budgetary requirement. So that number can change depending on what the manufacturers want to do for that budget cycle. But there is an ongoing need for money of this organization, because there will be site visits for potential applicants. There will be random inspections as well to make sure that the members are still complying to our standards.
Okay.
And there's other administrative fees to just running the organization like this. You need to maintain the website. There could be lawyer fees involved. There's just it does cost money to run something like this.
Well, you've mentioned lawyer fees, and that was my next question. Is AEMSA expecting to take a legal stance and to I don't know what the term is in America for an injunction, but it's probably an injunction to stop them from doing outright bans on bottled juices? Do you intend to be a kind of a conglomerate, a corporate body, to be able to go up against the FDA in court and say this ban can't happen if and when this cartomizer only, pre-filled cartomizer only ruling comes through?
Well, I mean, that would absolutely be in the best interest of our members. Our members produce refillable bottled e-liquid, and that's what this trade organization is set up to do. It's set up to represent the members of the trade organization in front of groups such as the FDA. So obviously, we would work in the best interest of our members. Hopefully, that also works in the best interest of the vaping community as well. But primarily, we want to make sure that our members are not pushed out of the businesses, or that their businesses are not pushed out of being able to be in business. If you're a business that creates bottled e-liquid and the FDA says you can't make that anymore, then obviously there's a lot of businesses out there that will close because of that.
Absolutely. I mean, it's not a good state of affairs, and I, for one, will say that if that happens worldwide and we've got to go to pre-filled cartomizers, I'm not sure that I'm going to be able to be bothered with that. It seems like too much of a clot for me to be constantly going out and having to buy pre-filled, and I definitely don't want to see the end of bottled juice. And I sincerely hope and trust that the majority of e-cig users would see it in exactly the same way. That is a bad thing. So from that respect, I do wish you good luck should you need to take legal action against the FDA. Sav, I can see your eyes flitting backwards and forwards. Have we anything to take from chat?
There's an awful lot of discussion about the nicotine limiting. I'll sort of round it all up into a couple of questions. Marco Van Basten said, why are AEMSA suggesting, dictating or advertising the milligram strength? And Marky Mars said, it should be based on scientific data stating that whatever milligram is too high, otherwise it's just personal opinion. It's the same as saying everybody has to smoke light cigarettes instead of normal cigarettes.
It's an interesting point. What do you say to that?
Well, to address that, I would say that the membership comes up with the standards. The membership can also change the standards at any time. The organization is for the members, and the members vote on the standards. The number that was come up with, 36 now, it was 32, now 36. There aren't any of the members that sell at a greater amount. There's also a need to maintain a responsible business, and generally in the United States there is no finished product that is meant to be ready vaped. That would be flavor, whatever else, but there's very few vendors in the United States that sell flavored finished product above 36.
Well, it goes back to the conversation that we were having earlier on. There does seem to be a divide across the pond between how the UK approaches e-liquid and how the US approaches e-liquid, as in I don't know many people personally that use much below 18, and this is where chat is no doubt going to start bombarding us with what they use on a daily basis. But I mean, it's relatively well known that Dave Kitson uses 45, I use 45 and 36, and very, very rarely anything less, unless it's just for a flavour hit. Certainly if I'm looking for nicotine, I don't go any less than 36. And in truth, the only one that I know that uses 11 on a daily basis is sat to your right on screen right at the moment, and that would be Sav. But over in the States, I'm seeing people selling out of 6 milligram and 8 milligram and 11 milligram, and I don't hear of, certainly on the forums, I don't hear of many people using much above 18 or 24. Is that the case? I mean, are Americans generally a lower nicotine level than we appear to be over here? And you would know, obviously.
Well, I would say to some extent it does appear that way. I know when I started vaping, I started on 36 and then jumped down to 24, and I'm still on 24 now. But there is a lot of people that use 18 or less. There are several that use 24. I'm sorry, that use 12, even less than 8, and there's a lot of people that request zero nicotine liquid. So they want the flavor, they want the vapor, but there's no nicotine in the product. In the States, a lot of people, they start high to get off of cigarettes, and then they slowly start stepping down. 12 and 18 seem to be the two biggest or the most popular flavors. So there is some kind of there is a bit of a difference between here and over there.
Right. Well, you having said that has actually brought me straight into a break. And when we come back, I'm going to break some of the news that's been happening over here, because I think your comment on it would be very useful. And it's a good lead into that. So we'll take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll just reiterate what you said, and then I'll break the news, and that's the sad part coming up. But thanks so far. We'll be back after this. Don't go anywhere. Back in 2 minutes.
Vaporworld.co.uk sponsors conversation on VT Talk.
GG, because you want one.
iVapor and iVapor Elixir, based in Yorkshire, for your e-cig needs. That's ivapor.co.uk and ivapor-elixir.co.uk. iVapor and ivapor-elixir.co.uk, proud sponsors of vaportrails.tv.
And now back to conversation on VT Talk, sponsored by Vaporworld.co.uk.
And we're back in the room with Scott Eley of Vaporcast and AEMSA, now that I've learned how to pronounce it, the American E-Liquid Manufacturers Standards Association. I nearly said agency there, sorry Scott. And yeah, today in the UK, NICE delivered its consultation documents for the use of, well, for tobacco harm reduction. And I've spent a large part of the day reading through the millions of words, and I don't think I'm exaggerating, in PDFs that are hundreds of pages long, talking about how tobacco harm reduction can be applied in the UK, and looking at what's acceptable and what's not. And I've come across a few bits of passages on there that have given me cause for concern, and I'll try and explain why. And what you said before we went into the break, Scott, actually informs all of this, because you did say that in the States there's a lot of people are stepping down from 36 to 24 to 18 to 12, 11, 8, 6, 5 and then 0 nic. That's what is known in the UK as cutting down to quit. How many folks over there are doing that?
Well, I have no statistics on that, but there are quite a few. Like I said earlier, normally people start at a much higher strength, 24s and the 18s, and they step down from there. Adam, who also is on the podcast, he bounces back and forth between 6 and 12, and he started on 18. So there are several people that do it just because they have a desire just to step down their nicotine, and that's great. If you can still use the device, you can still get flavor, you can still replicate the act of smoking, you can still interact with people who smoke in a social fashion, but you can do it with no nicotine. I think that's a great way to do it.
Okay, let me just go to this document that NICE has pulled out then, and give you the context of where they're coming from. It says here, quitting smoking is the best way to improve the health of someone who smokes. Quitting in one step offers the best chance of being successful and is the least costly method. Investment in approaches to reduce the harm caused by tobacco should not detract from the provision of existing stop smoking services, which provide highly cost-effective interventions to help people quit in one step. I'll just point out that the bit I'm highlighting now is a lie. They're not highly cost-effective interventions to help people quit in one step. Anything but, because they don't actually do it in more than about 8% of cases. It says rather the recommendations in this guidance are intended to support and extend the reach and impact of existing services. Some people, particularly those who are highly dependent on smoking, may not be able or do not want to quit smoking in one step, or they may not want to quit at all. Harm reduction approaches provide an alternative. Now then, this is what they see as being harm reduction methods. Methods such as cutting down to quit, the quit word's still there, may appeal to people who do not want to quit in one step. Smoking less is an option for those who are not currently interested in quitting smoking, although the health benefits are not clear. Well, I would have thought they were, frankly, but never mind. However, for some, this can be the start of a gradual change in behaviour that eventually leads them to quit smoking. So far, in their harm reduction strategy, they've both ended up in quitting smoking. These strategies are also relevant to people who need to be abstinent, for example, because they are confined in an environment where smoking is prohibited, such as a prison or secure mental health unit. Sorry. In summary, offering a harm reduction option may ultimately increase the number of people who quit smoking and can help reduce the harm to smokers and those around them. I want to pause at that point in that document and say that it would appear that the NICE approach to harm reduction is to get people to quit. Am I reading this the wrong way? Do you interpret that the same way, Scott?
Well, so I'm speaking for myself at this point.
Sure.
It would appear that they're taking the stance that unfortunately a lot of the anti-smoking groups in the United States have taken, and that is quit or die. They talk about tobacco harm reduction, yet the only means in which they talk about tobacco harm reduction are in quitting smoking. Well, there's more ways to lower tobacco harm reduction than just quitting in one step, which I would assume means don't smoke anymore, period.
Yeah.
But what they fail to realize, and there are studies done in the United States that show this, that the habitual addiction to smoking is stronger than the chemical addiction to nicotine. So though you may quit or cut down the number of cigarettes you consume, if you're at a bar or a pub, if you will, and your group of friends go out to smoke, because generally in the United States you can't smoke indoors anymore. I don't know how it is there, but if they go out to have a cigarette, and you're cutting down, or you have recently quit smoking cigarettes, then all of a sudden you feel like you've been left out. So you lose the social interaction. You still have the habitual addiction that is there. I remember when I smoked, I was driving about an hour to work. Well, at the same point in the drive every day, I would light a cigarette. And when I switched to e-cigarettes, I pretty much stopped smoking that same day. But during those points in the drive, and this lasted for many months, those points in the drives where I would normally light a cigarette, I found myself still wanting to light a cigarette. And that is purely habitual. There is no chemical addiction to nicotine at that point, because I'm getting my nicotine through e-cigarettes. So the quit or die mentality really, I think, does a disservice to those who want to stop smoking, because if they say that the only way to lower tobacco harm reduction is to quit smoking, then those who are unwilling or unable to quit won't try an alternate tobacco harm reduction strategy. Maybe that's snus, maybe that's dissolvables, maybe that's e-cigarettes. And I wish this myth, or this misguided tobacco harm reduction strategy of only stop smoking, I wish that would go away.
I agree with you 100%. I mean, just looking at the harm reduction approaches to tobacco control, which is the next little section on there. I'll just need to scroll that down so that you can see. Again, the language that they're using in this document is all, it seems to all be geared towards the same end, which is quitting nicotine. It's not tobacco control they're on about. It seems to be nicotine control. It's nicotine that they're demonising. And yet we know, the MHRA has told us, and I think the FDA has said the same thing, that nicotine is not in and of itself a particularly dangerous drug or a particularly dangerous substance. But their take on harm reduction, it says here, involves continued use of tobacco or nicotine while reducing the harm caused by tobacco to the smoker and others. The options addressed in this guidance are quit smoking. For the life of me, I cannot see how that's harm reduction. It's quitting smoking. It's quitting nicotine. But they want you to quit in one step with the help of one or more licensed nicotine-containing products and continue to use these products as a substitute for tobacco, possibly indefinitely. Do I sense big pharma involvement here? Well, let's see. Cut down prior to quitting by smoking fewer cigarettes or inhaling or smoking less of each cigarette, with or without the help of one or more licensed nicotine-containing products. Smoke less by smoking fewer cigarettes, inhaling less or smoking less of each cigarette, with or without the help of one or more licensed nicotine-containing products. It's like the same thing. Cut down prior to quitting. Smoke less because if you do that, you'll quit. Temporarily abstain with or without the help of one or more licensed nicotine-containing products. It's all licensed nicotine-containing products. Nowhere in this are they saying that e-cigs really are a viable alternative. And as I say, I'm probably only a tenth of the way reading through all of this, but looking at the evidence that they've produced and everything else, e-cigs are kind of mentioned. They're the ugly cousin that you leave in the bathroom when the family comes to visit, you know what I mean? They're the dog that farts while there's people in the house and it's just shooed out of the way. That's where e-cigarettes are. They don't seem to be taking them seriously. And I can see a furrowed brow on Sav, which tells me that chat has got something to say.
Chat's got an awful lot to say. I'll work through it. Seabiscuit has said, I never wanted to quit, still don't. Gary Wood said, quit, quit, quit. Why don't they quit? I'll politely change that word to lying and nagging. Kyle D says, I never quit. Smoking is still awesome. Tracy Collins said, I've never been a quitter. Jill CB says, I love smoking, so I use a healthier alternative, which is vaping. My specialist is happy with that, and that's all I care about. Gary Wood said, I would love to quit paying taxes. Can they help me with that? Maddie Paulus said, surely tobacco harm reduction has occurred if you've dropped down from 30 to 5 a day. Kyle says, I love smoking, so I do. I love vaping, so I do. I love taking snuff, so I do. And I also love cigars and pipes, so I smoke those too. Marco Van Basten said, there's the magic word, licensed. Gary Wood says, licensed equals tax and license equals control. And Sam Monroe said, isn't a cigarette a licensed nicotine-containing product?
I would think a cigarette is a licensed nicotine-containing product because the people that sell them have to have a license so to do. They've got, this is, I should point out, I should emphasise that this is draft, and that there's going to be a consultation on this. And I would urge people to go and have a look at the nice.org site. They've got a big enough link to the whole thing that you'll be able to find it, but I'll put links up in our forum as I usually do, or I try to, after the fact, as it were. But, and this is something else that's annoying me, they are only going to take submissions from stakeholders. Okay, now you can apply to be a stakeholder still, even now, but I looked at the list of stakeholders today, and I would ask of you that you go and have a look at the list of stakeholders as well and see if you can see any names that are missing. I'm not going to say any more than that because I don't want to start a row. ECHA's on there. We applied, we didn't get it because I applied and they wouldn't put us on as stakeholders. I don't know why. Probably because they consider that we're a news organisation and therefore shouldn't be biased, which is probably correct. But I would urge you to go and have a look and see who are stakeholders. But let me just go into what actions statutory agencies such as health and wellbeing boards, stop smoking services, professional bodies such as the BMA and the Royal Medical and Nursing Colleges, regional tobacco control organisations, all of that. Here's the actions that this draft guidance says they should take. You should raise awareness among the public of the harm caused by smoking and second-hand smoke. Provide information on how people who smoke can reduce the risk of illness and death to themselves and others by using another source of nicotine, such as a licensed nicotine-containing product. Provide information in a range of formats and languages for different target groups, and ensure the information includes the following facts. Right? It says there, facts. I'll highlight it, because I would argue that some of these aren't facts. 1. Smoking causes a range of diseases and conditions, including cancer, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease and cardiovascular disease. I'm going to come into shot. That's an incorrect statement. Smoking can cause a range of diseases. It doesn't have to. Next one. Most health problems are almost entirely caused by other components in cigarettes, not by the nicotine. I'll come into shot. Thumbs up on that one. That's true. Smoking is highly addictive because it delivers nicotine very quickly to the brain, and this makes quitting smoking difficult. Duh. Nicotine replacement.
I'm going to jump in on 1 moment there. So, yes, it delivers nicotine, and that makes quitting difficult. But they have shown, there's been studies in the U.S. that have shown that the chemical, and I'm not a doctor, and I'm not saying I am, but from the empirical evidence I've seen in the studies, the chemical addiction to nicotine is broken in 48 hours. The habitual addiction is where the true heart of the problem is. If it was just a nicotine replacement therapy, such as a patch or the nicotine gum, would have a much higher success rate than 3 to 5%. If it was only about replacing nicotine, it's not replacing nicotine. The patch and the nicotine gum does not satisfy the habitual addiction, and that is what they seem to be missing. They seem to be lumping tobacco harm reduction in with approved smoking cessation methods, and I think that's where they're failing on this.
Well, I mean, they've got a track record of failing with the approved smoking cessation methods, whether it's bupropion, varenicline, or any of the patches, gums, inhalators, any of those. None of them have got a success rate above 10%. Let's be generous on it. Let's be really generous and say none of them have got a success rate above 15% at 13 months. Not one. Nothing. The only one that's got a demonstrable success in keeping people off tobacco cigarettes, and this is people who do not want to quit, bearing in mind that the smoking cessation medications, the medicinal ones, are prescribed or recommended to people who want to quit, who have a desire to pack it in, who actually want to get off fags and nicotine, and still only 15% of them succeed. Now that tells me that one of two statements is true. One is that those people didn't actually want to quit, they'd been coerced into doing it, or two, the products don't work in the way that they're advertised. Either one of those two is true, and I suspect it's somewhere between the two, because I think if you want to quit, you'll quit, and I mean properly quit to zero nicotine, just pack in nicotine usage altogether. I think that would be the case, and I can see the eyes are flitting again, so I know Chat's got something to say before we go any further.
Yes, Moonlit has said, like there needs to be any more awareness. Everybody's well aware of the adverts and the notes they leave on the cigarette packets and leaflets and whatnot. Seriously, if people haven't decided to quit by now, what makes anybody think they still will with yet more badgering and pushing?
It's an extremely, sorry, that was 45 hitting the clack while I was trying to talk. It kicks just as much coming out as it does going in. It's good stuff. Yeah. it's a very, very valid point. I mean, who out in the developed world, who in the developed world doesn't know that there's a risk to using cigarettes? Nobody. Everybody knows that there's a risk. Nobody doesn't know. Who doesn't know? You can't not know. It's shoved down your throat every 5 minutes. It doesn't matter where you look. High horse, dismount, carry on. Let's pick up where we were. And it says, nicotine replacement therapy products are an effective way of reducing the harm from cigarettes. I've got to dive in and say, maybe, but I think we've demonstrated that they're not that effective. There are no circumstances when it is safer to smoke than to use NRT products, and experts believe that lifetime use of NRT will be considerably less harmful than smoking. I'll go along with that. NRT products have been demonstrated to be safe to use for up to 5 years, and here's the bit, right at the bottom. I shall highlight it so that everybody can see it. Little is known about the effectiveness, quality and safety of unregulated nicotine-containing products such as electronic cigarettes. However, they are likely to be less harmful than cigarettes, and this, I think, is something that they're just not doing the research on. Now, I spent a considerable time during the course of today speed reading through an awful lot of this stuff to try and pick up, and I looked at the studies that they'd used. And those of you that were watching on the 720 and 480 before we went fully live will have seen that we were having a conversation about this document has yet again cherry-picked that FDA study that was done, when was it, 2009 I think it was, Scott?
Oh, I muted myself. Yes, it's been a long time ago.
So yes, they cherry-picked that one and came up with the how many times has that been debunked? In the States, I've seen loads of debunks.
Several times, and CASA in the States has petitioned the FDA to amend the statement there, but unfortunately they haven't. So all of these anti-groups, or anybody that wants to take an anti-e-cigarette stance, they keep pulling that up and rehashing that. You hear it all the time. You see it in news articles. It's one of those things that it's almost like the cat's out of the bag, and they don't care. They don't want to put it back in, even if they know it's wrong. Yeah.
It's a sorry state of affairs, it really is. We've got to take a short break now. When we come back, we'll wind this up. I think there might be too high horses for people to be getting on here, because I'm getting wound up, and I think Scott might be as well, even by what's happening in the UK. And we'll take questions from chat and comments from chat when we come back. We will be back in 2 minutes. Don't go anywhere.
Vaporworld.co.uk sponsors conversation on VT Talk. And now back to conversation on VT Talk, sponsored by Vaporworld.co.uk.
And we're back in the room with Scott Eley of Vaporcast and AEMSA and Sav and myself, Dave Dawn. Before we shut off there, we were talking about what the recommendations are, the draft recommendations from NICE to the people who I suppose most folks would go to if they've got any here or there about smoking. And I know that there were a few comments from chat, and I know that there's a couple of questions directly for Scott. So let's take the comments from chat, Sav, and we'll go from there. Yeah.
Right, I'll take the most recent stuff that's come in, then I'll cover the ones that I've missed.
Okay.
Moonlit has said, regarding effectiveness, it seems effective to me. There's no way I would have stopped smoking burning tobacco if e-cigs didn't exist. Tracy Collins said, it's easy to claim something is unknown when you don't know about it by not reading about it. Jill CB says, at least e-cigarettes were mentioned, so when will they start looking into it as a genuine alternative? And Maddie Paulus says, so if I vape, it means I've stopped smoking 4,000 plus chemicals and 20 plus known carcinogens for something that is only likely to be less harmful. I think I'll take the risk that e-cigs are safer by a large order of magnitude. And now let's see if I can find all the stuff that I highlighted before.
Okay.
All right. Moonlit has said, the mention of the lack of rebuildables and whatnot in the USA makes me curious. Does e-cig technology lag somewhat over there? It seems like the Americans are happier when it comes to e-cigs. Is that the case? With juice strength also, their demands don't seem to be as high as ours.
That's one that we need to throw straight at Scott because he'll know.
Sure. So the rebuildable tanks and addy combinations, they are quite widely used. I do know that. I know Zen has a huge following for his rebuildables. There's also now some import products that are hitting that are smaller rebuildable atomizers. I think generally over here, you know, when the 510 came out in 2009, everybody just kind of switched to that. Most people here drip, or most people in the community anyways drip. The mainstream users, they still use the mini type of e-cigs with the pre-filled cartomizers. But from a community standpoint, a lot of people still drip. The dual coils cartomizer tanks are very popular. So I wouldn't say that the U.S. is lagging. I think it's just the tastes are different. I know the taste for some of our juices are different.
Yes, I think we've demonstrated that quite adequately. Certainly, most of the American juices that I've tried have been very, very heavily flavoured in comparison to the stuff that I would normally use. And that's not necessarily a bad thing if you're looking for flavour. I've got to say, when you take it onto something like a Genesis, it almost knocks you over. There's so much of it because they are flavour monsters without a doubt. What else have we got there, Sav?
We've got a question from Very Boring who says, do any of the AEMSA members sell Nick juice for DIYers? And if so, what strength is recommended? I mix all my own so I can get the flavour just the way I want it.
Well, that's a good question. Yes, we do have members that do sell nicotine for DIY type of people. Our standards don't limit the strength that DIY nicotine can be sold, and that would be unflavored nicotine base for the DIY market only, not for a finished product. But the members are still required to make sure that if they're bringing it in, it's traceable. So if anybody has an issue with that if they sell 100 milligram DIY juice, that they have tested it to make sure it's 100 milligram. As far as a suggestion goes, if I understood the question right, do I have a suggestion on what strength to start with for DIY? I would say start at the lowest amount that you're comfortable with. If you're comfortable, if you want to have a finished product at a 24, start at a 48 and cut it in half, or start at a 36 and cut it a little bit. Do what is most comfortable for you.
Okay, that all seems fair. That all seems absolutely fair. Anything more for Scott?
Another question which I haven't copied half of it, so I'm going to have to make up bits of it, and if it's wrong, Sam Monroe, I apologise. Regarding, I think it was regarding the limitations of the juice strengths, he says, Does Scott think it's because the US sees e-cigs as a cessation route, i.e. reducing the nick then stopping, whereas in the UK it's more seen as an alternative?
Okay, well, it's very important to point out that in the U.S. you are legally prohibited from calling an e-cig a cessation device. There has to be trials done that the FDA approves of, several different case studies and so forth to refer to an e-cigarette as a cessation device. Now, many people do use it for that. We still consider them to be an alternative to smoking. I think again it just comes down to one of those kind of taste things.
We've seen a lot of that here as well, and I must admit, in my trolling around ECF and various other forums, I see an awful lot of people on the cutting down to quit, and who have they're stating categorically that they've picked up e-cigs as a method to quit altogether, to get off nicotine. And in my book, quitting means getting off nicotine. That's an end to it. And it would appear that NICE takes the same view. We know the World Health Organization takes the same view, and we know the EU takes the same view, as does the MHRA and the FDA. That's what quit means to all of them. And we also know that further on in all of this documentation that I've been looking at, there is a statement that says it is recognised by all of these bodies that the majority of people use e-cigs to quit smoking. Not to quit smoking tobacco, but as a smoking cessation. They use that term, a smoking cessation device. And that's something I want to pick up on next week and the week after, because the week after next we've got Jerry Stimson coming in. Fingers crossed, it's all agreed. Let's hope we can get it all together to talk more about harm reduction. But as per usual with these things, I want to give the last word to Scott.
Can I interrupt just before, because I promised I would read this one and I forgot, and it's a direct message to Scott from Seabiscuit, who says, I missed the podcast and the juice rating system. Between a leopard and a tiger, I rate an ice cream van.
Well, thanks for that. That sounds good.
I'm going to be completely thick here. What does he mean by that?
When in the podcast, when we do a juice review, a lot of times if you see a juice review either on YouTube or something like that, they'll rate the flavor, they'll rate the vapor production, and maybe it's 1 to 5 stars, or it's a rating scale from 1 to 10 or 1 to 5. We always thought that was kind of ridiculous because taste is so subjective. Indeed. So in the end, a rating of a juice really doesn't mean anything. We like full flavored juices. You may not like the juice as flavorful as we do. So we just kind of came up with this just off the wall rating scale where you just think of 2 things that are unrelated and then think of a third thing as the rating for that. So it could be between a race car and a thundercloud. I rate this product a Q-tip.
Oh. Do you mind if I nick that? I like that.
Yeah, you can take that and run with it. Just occasionally, you got to give us some credit for that.
I'm quite happy so to do. I've never nicked an idea without having credited it. And I mean, I'll tell you now for nothing. All of this that you see tonight, I blame Leo Laporte for at Twit TV. I've got no issue with saying he's my hero when it comes down to podcasting. The guy's got it taped. So I've got no problem with that. I'm going to nick the idea and use it, and I will give you credit every show I do. That's not a problem in any way, shape or form. Sav, have we got anything else before we need to go? Because I am aware it's time for the credits.
No, we are done.
That is most cool. It's been an enlightening show. Scott, thank you so much for coming to join us. I know you had to take some time out of work and come home early. I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, that really pained me, and I want to thank you, Dave, for having me on to talk about AEMSA. I mean, we'll come back. One of us, I or somebody, will come back anytime you want to discuss things like that. And so, thanks for having us, and thanks for listening.
It's not a problem, and we'll be glad to have you back anytime. As per usual, I need to say my thank yous firstly to our chat audience, our live audience. As I've said before, and I'll say it again, we've got the best chat in the planet. There is no doubt. My thanks to Scott Eley of AEMSA and Vaporcast for coming across and guesting with us tonight and telling me how to pronounce it, because I've had so much trouble over this last week. Thanks as usual to Sav for question wrangling and Cat for wrangling the questions. Same thing, different order. Till next time, we'll see you again. Take care. Bye bye.
VT Talk was sponsored by Vaporworld, introducing the straight-up range of e-liquid from the USA containing real tobacco extracts.